Well, good evening, New Zealand, and to everyone around the world. We know people from all around the globe, believe it or not, tune into Straight Talk. Welcome to Straight Talk episode 87. Look, I am clearly not Bob McCoskrie. You can decide why I'm clearly not Bob, whether it's particular attributes, skills, or otherwise. But no, jokes aside, Bob is overseas at the moment, attending a conference often referred to as SoConCon, which isn't me losing my English language at this time of night. SoConCon is the social conservative conference in the United States. So Bob is out of the country, and the beginning of a coup is starting here at Family First. And speaking of that, let's bring our wonderful guests in tonight, who are all part of this plot, as Bob is now out of the country. Speaking of one of the key plotters, Bruce Logan, welcome along.
Oh. Welcome, he says. Nice to see you, Simon.
Well, it's an unusual place for me to be host of it. Lovely to have you along, Bruce. And we've got Sue Reed there, I believe up north, not in the usual Wairarapa.
I've migrated north, in the winterless north on a holiday, actually, but it's looking pretty tempting to move up to somewhere where there's not a frost and just thaw out the bones a bit, having a holiday.
Fair enough. Our next guest will know it's also been rather cold here in Auckland, and also is sometimes known as Sue, but we know as Suzanne or Susie. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Hi from Manurewa. Yeah, it's a bit cold, but I'm coping. It's good.
That is, I found it was like 4 degrees when I woke up this morning, though, of course, most of the rest of the country would tell me to harden up. But Suzanne, lovely to have you along. And Elliot Ikele, how could we ever have a show without you? Welcome along.
Oh, kia ora from Otara Heights. I'm very happy to be here, and I'll be a revolutionary, which shall be televised, but not on state broadcaster.
Well, look, wonderful gender balance tonight, if you take me out of the equation, but we have no shortage of topics. For those tuning in, know we're going to be talking about homeschooling versus state schooling versus private and charter schools. We're going to talk around the place of Karakia. Is there a place of Karakia in public life? Should 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds be allowed to vote? The UK has just made changes. Should New Zealand be following suit? We're going to talk about the Green Party, one of the Green Party MPs wanting to get rid of all colonial statues. We're going to talk about that and ask what is next. And then we're going to talk about a fascinating case, actually a set of cases coming out of the United Kingdom, which amongst other things have seen the police banned from being part of pride parades. So guys, we have no shortage of topics tonight. And before we get into it, just a quick message to all our viewers and listeners here. If you do want to comment, know that we're across all the platforms from LinkedIn to Facebook, YouTube to X. If you want to, though, get messages directly to me, tonight is best through Facebook. I'm going to admit, hand on heart, yes, can you believe it, a former politician being honest. I don't have full access to the system, but I do have my iPad here, which means hopefully I'll be able to see various messages that come in as the evening goes on, and will do my best to discuss them. I won't be able to put them on screen. But let's turn to our first topic of the night: homeschooling versus Christian schooling versus state schooling versus private schooling versus charter school. We've had a bit of news come through at the moment, one through News Talk ZB, which we might begin with. So we've got this one here for our panel. I mean, obviously a lot of headlines over the last week or so, but an expert in the education space has, and I'm sorry that I've forgotten their name, typical of me at 8 o'clock at night, is saying actually failures within the state education system, increase of bullying, behavioural issues, also the quality of education, dare we say it, as a husband to a teacher, is seeing people move into the home schooling space. At the same time, we're seeing consequences in the sporting realm for those who are homeschoolers. There's actually now a bill before Parliament, or being put forward into Parliament, saying actually people who are homeschooling should be allowed to be part of schooling competitions, sports competitions. At the moment, because they're not allocated to a specific school, they can't play sport. And then all around this, guys, we've just had an announcement that the government, a national government, including a national government that started this around open planned or modern learning environments, as it was called. I have to admit, I was in the government at the time, but we are seeing the government closing down or moving away from these modern learning environments, these big open barns. And then the last thing I might throw in, seeing we're talking education, is we're hearing that the NCEA, this supposedly wonderful, I'm putting my bias here immediately, but the supposedly wonderful educational structure is failing. A lot of schools are actively choosing to use the Cambridge system for examinations, and NCEA is struggling. So I'm going to turn to you first, Bruce, because I know you know a thing or two and have an opinion or three on matters of education. And maybe, if you don't mind, we'll start around why we're seeing an increasing number of families choosing to send their children to homeschools or the likes of charter schools, and to be honest, independent schools as well. I mean, what is driving this from your perspective?
Well, the Achilles heel is catching up with us. Homeschooling is something that I think the first thing that needs to be said about homeschooling is that it saves the taxpayer money. It saves the money of whether you go to a Christian school, a private school, a charter school, or whatever. And I did a bit of research on that a few years ago. And an integrated school, it costs something like 30% less to educate a pupil in an integrated school than it did in a state school. So homeschooling is a good thing for everyone because it's less money. And the other thing is, it also recognises an obvious truth, something we all used to believe in, that the parent is the primary educator of the child. And the homeschooling recognises that. In 1877, when the Education Act said that education should be compulsory, free, and secular, it worked well. That particular understanding of secular worked well because we still had a fairly overarching Christian narrative that informed it. But when cultural relativism gained prominence in the 1990s, it began to exercise and become an exercise in propaganda. So I think people are starting to realise that the kind of quality of education they want is being influenced by not the content of what they should be taught, but rather by ideas and ideology that's shaping them. And I think it might be worthwhile just to give us some clout to what I'm saying, is that go back to J.S. Mill and then back in the 19th century. He was a utilitarian philosopher, for goodness sake. And he said the state education is likely to assume control over the mind and then one over the body, which in fact it's done and is doing. So I say all power to the homeschoolers.
Susie, I mean, you're there, as you mentioned, down in South Auckland. Are you seeing a number of people, including parishioners and people attending your church and the wider community, pulling away from state schooling, looking for alternatives, be they Christian schools, be they charter schools, or certainly be they homeschooling?
I think I've noticed a lot more discussion and a lot of questions around the effectiveness of education in state schools, but not like big trends away from state schools. Our 7 children, we have experienced all 4 forms of schooling that we're discussing now, and I advise every parent in our church, anyone who asks, friends, it's the responsibility for your child's education is completely up to you, and you need to do your research and you need to ask the Lord, like, where do I want my kids to be? Because it's timing, what is going on in schools right now, and I'm concur with Bruce. I think there's far less Christian culture, and just, Bible in schools is not allowed in like most schools now. It's pretty sad. So it has to be wrapped up in well-being programs that are allowed in some schools. But yeah, I homeschooled my kids because even back 20 years ago, I knew that I'd be more effective, faster at teaching them how to read. And I knew that sending them to school with already having that skill, they could pick up anything else that they needed to pick up on. Charter schools here in South Auckland, we've got probably more options within charter schools than other people around the country, and I've thought that they've been great for our kids. And our kids have gone on back to a state school after charter school and done pretty well with NCEA. I don't know if we're discussing NCEA right now, but
Go for it. You've got the microphone. Take control.
I guess it's uh, employers who are crying out that, they've got illiterate young people coming through. It's more than a lack of skill. I think I don't want to just broad brush this, but there is a lot of in Gen Z and Alpha or whoever, a lack of resilience, I guess, and that all kind of just everyone wants to look at like, why is that? I think all throughout my schooling career, I've known about Cambridge exams and other schools having like that option. So parents have had the option of sending their kids to school with Cambridge exams all along. I just think there's more now who are looking at the system, who are looking at our education levels in general in New Zealand and going, no, we want something better. This is not working. So I think that's the trends we're seeing.
I think part of it, too, from what I've observed, is a lot of people don't understand what NCEA means when they're presenting in front of those employers. Before we turn to you, Elliot, I'm going to ask you if the schools are too woke. Just it's an easy softball question for you, but I thought I'd just quickly touch on a few comments. As I mentioned to viewers, I can only look on Facebook tonight. We've got a lot of people obviously saying hello to each of you. Paul is suggesting that I just identify as Bob and that we can all just play along. Rosie says, I wish I'd been homeschooled as I wouldn't have been bullied, but not only students, but also by teachers. Justine says, homeschooling is so much better. Parents can teach morals and religious stuff, and there's no bullying. Most parents are better teachers because they know what their child wants. So fantastic comments coming through there. But there's the question for you, Elliot, and feel free to run into NCA as well. But I mean, are parents pulling their kids out because they don't want the indoctrination side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got further. So first off, in terms of the state school versus any other school, homeschooling requires that one of the parents stays home. And what that means is that the other parent has to be able to have the money or pulling in the money that allows them to even do that. So it'll be fascinating to see that if you were able to have a society where, again, whether the husband or wife or mother or the father, that their work brought in enough money for the family to be able to allow for homeschooling, it would be fascinating to know as to how many would take on homeschooling. I think that's a fascinating study that should be looked upon, because a lot of the people out there, as you say, best teachers are the parents, and a lot of what's going on in the state schools is really, really bad. We know, for example, that a lot of the kids who engage in violence, sexual assaults on other children, that they are being left alone, that there is sometimes are given a 3-day suspension, or that they have some type of quick wraparound service. We've seen some extraordinary levels of sexual deviation, for example, even within the intermediate and a couple within the primary school environments. It's quite shocking how that works. So there are some perverse figures that they seem to struggle by removing really dangerous kids from that environment, therefore it puts other kids at risk. It's also interesting that on your value-based schools, Santa Maria, Elim School, South Auckland Middle School, Manukau Christian School, that there are massive waiting lists for these schools. And these are very often from people and parents who are not Christian or not such value-based. So it seems that they really want those values, even if they don't want the deity behind those values. Again, that's another fascinating fact to look at. Now, in my school, my children's school, I've had to go down to that school twice, and I'm about to write a big, long missive tonight, actually, after this, and the first time was around the RSE, the sexualized ideology that was pushing its way into schools. I'm very, very happy, very honored to have been part of a crew within that school to really push the school itself to stop trying to push that ideology onto the children, to the primary school definitely, and then to lesser extent in the intermediate school. The other one is I've gone down to the school and told them directly, you will not treat my children any differently than the Indian kids, the Palangi kids, the Asian kids. That if they fail, they are to fail. I'm not wanting them to somehow be given some sort of softer approach simply because they happen to be part Māori and part Pacifica. And so I've been very strong. I've been telling them that very directly. And I've also had support from a couple of Cook Island families as well as a couple of Niuean families in that. The other one, the one tonight is about the Good Space program that has been pushing a horrific questionnaire to all children, which talks about gender, alcohol abuse, pornography use, smoking, vaping, and anything like that. And it goes to the entire school, as far as I can tell. So the problem with our schools is still that is woke ideology. The National Party has not gotten rid of this very much at all. The speaking seems to be there, but not much else. So I think charter schools, absolutely a wonderful approach. Value-based schools, very approach, and if possible, homeschooling is excellent. In terms of NCA, I think it was always an idiotic idea. It was always idiotic. Even me, all the way back, even as I was a different life, definitely not a Christian. Even I looked at NCA back when it was being pushed by Jim Bolger and his crew, and then of course taken on by the Labour Party, Helen Clark's Labour Party, and in fact by Trevor Mallard, to go into that real infamous area. It was always a foolish thing to put through, always. So the fact that the kids have been damaged by it, I think is, you would have to have been willfully ignorant not to see that it was going to damage our children, even with the other things like the foolish open plan classrooms, again, which is guilty from both parties as well. National and Labour allowed all of this to go through. So it's good that National are finally fixing up their mistakes. Finally they're listening to the people, but I'm a little bit cynical when I think, oh well, you're doing some wonderful things. No, you're not. You're fixing the mistakes and the problems that were very clearly articulated to you, and it's about time that you fixed your own problems.
Well, that's thoroughly and comprehensive, as we'd always expect from any of the panelists. Before we turn to you, Sue, a couple of comments coming through. Chris notes, actually, I think it's a summary of sort of the counterpoint, if you will. He's saying, we both tried homeschooling and a Christian school, but my daughter preferred to go back to a school as she missed the social aspect that the school offered. And I think that probably resonates with some too. But turning to yourself, Sue, who's been exceptionally patient. I know before we came on live, you were mentioning a bit of a link or a bit of knowledge around that sports element around homeschooling. I wonder if you just, well, feel free to touch on that or anything else that we've touched on here, and then I'll come back to you immediately to talk about this open plan or these modern learning environments being cancelled.
Yeah, that's a local issue. We're rural, so the opportunities for kids to participate in sports events, if they're homeschooling, they're being not given the recognition, the awards, because they're not part of a formal school. I don't think it needs the legislation. If you're participating as an independent sports person or an independent team, then surely it can be as simple as just awarding an independent sports person. So so that's been a bit of a hard call for them, but they're galvanised. In regard to homeschooling, and look, schools are always a partnership between parent, child, the triangle, parent, child, and the school. It shouldn't be weighted where the school dictates to you as a family. It's a very personal thing. It's a very tailored thing. And I guess now, having adult children, I apologise to my children for the crap education that we provided for them. But, and they joke about it. But, we had limited choices because we're a rural area. So we didn't have the option of a Christian school. We didn't have an option of a lot of, we had private schools, we had Trinity schools and Catholic schools and things, but we were limited in our choices. We didn't choose to homeschool because we were committed to, like Elliot was saying, we were committed to work. But doesn't mean that we took our focus off the children's education. As parents, you have a responsibility to be involved in your child's. You go alongside them. And I can remember challenging one of the teachers, sorry, all the teachers out there, but, when I was dismissed as a parent, saying that I was concerned about their handwriting, that their handwriting was atrocious. Oh, that's not a priority. Well, it is. It is education is preparing a child for the adult world. And so those sort of things are really, really important. So I guess as parents, we could probably beat ourselves up a bit in the choices, and we feel that responsibility to make the right choices for our children. Having said that, they did go through the state system, and my children have said to other Christian parents who were choosing for their little darlings, saying, "Oh, we need a Christian school," and they're, "Well, we went through the state school, and we had parents who just who were able to feed in the Christian teaching and the worldview stuff and all that sort of thing. We were able to pad out that education." Having said that, now is a different kettle of fish. The state school is a different place than when my children were going through. And so I have a lot of sympathy for parents having to make those choices these days. But just touching on the NCEA, it went over my head. My children were going in the early stages of NCEA, so I had to get my head around a lot of stuff, and probably handed it over to my children. Were right, you're responsible for your education here. You know what you need to get. You know what you need to, what subjects you need to be taking, and a bit of guidance. But NCEA has an opportunity now to opportunity to change it, so that probably have a more targeted approach. What do you need out of your education? Are you going for university entrance, or are you going for trade preparation? Target it and tailor it so that each child can streamline their qualifications for those areas, for those different platforms. I guess I'm sort of in a no man's land here, and teachers are probably screaming at the screens now. What you're talking about? No, probably I don't, but I do know and I do understand that children education is with the goal to prepare them for adulthood, for the choices and the different genres, I guess, of work, fields of work that they're going to go into. Do we do that the best for our students through NCEA? And I think we've probably got an opportunity to just tailor it a bit and make it a rather than, oh, if I just do this driving test, I can get so many points in NCEA. Rather than trivialising it, rather than dumbing it down, let's set some benchmarks that are a little bit more realistic. And employers want to know where are you sitting on the pecking order or the field. I guess teachers don't probably like that. We don't like to kind of put them into categories. Employers want to know, how did you go in English? How did you go in maths? Where do you sit? And how's that going to sit how's that going to suit and tailor make your student for this job that you're now applying for? So that's my take on it, Simon.
Oh, well, thank you, Sue, and to all of you, actually. I'm going to touch very quickly on a couple of comments, then I want to go around really quickly around this change around modern learning environments. But just noted here, Stacey has said, "I'm part of a prayer team at my daughter's Christian school, and it's been a privilege and an honor to pray weekly for these children. We've seen God move and his love prevail." And then, who may or may not be a daughter of a certain Bob McCoskrie, says, "Nice to have a good host tonight. That last guy was terrible." I think Bob's daughter is probably lucky that Bob's overseas and she's still here. Hey, really, really quickly, and we'll start with you again, Sue. Modern learning environments, National, John Key, Nikki Kay bought these in. I've forgotten what year. I recall being in government at the time. They bought them in. They said they were amazing, and now the government's pulling back. I suppose the question to each and every one of you, but starting with you, Sue, is this any surprise?
No, it's not a surprise that they're changing it again. Look, I had a bit of a flashback when I started seeing these modern learning environments, and I thought, oh my goodness, I remember this in the 70s. My year 5 class, we did this open plan with the trapezium tables and movable walls, and I am actually, I know it's hard to believe, but I'm predominantly an introvert. And as a predominantly introvert student, as a child, I found it overwhelming, overload of my senses, and I found it chaotic. I liked something a bit more ordered. Okay, that's personal, but I do vividly remember that year, and perhaps it's been just seared into my memory. So going from, and I was thinking, oh gosh, that's a throwback to the 70s, and I know that I did prefer that quieter room, single classroom. So I'm not surprised that it's going back. I think things go in trends. Things work. My point would probably be, did they listen to the people that were designing this? Sometimes they just fail to go to the coalface and ask the people, the educators, what do you think of this? And where's your experience in this? And what's this going to look like in operation? So sometimes I think people in, who are designing these education profiles or whatever you call them, don't know the technical terms, sometimes they just fail to involve the teachers and educators, and they've got a lot of experience and they know what works and what doesn't. So I think this is probably an exercise in "we told you so."
Elliot, you've been involved with, obviously, in teaching. You've been involved a lot in politics. I mean, are you surprised when you cast your mind back from when this was first announced that now it's being pulled?
Yeah, it was always foolish, and I think this is a very political move, very cleverly strategized. I think this is one of those ones where they've carefully planned when to stop the open plan nonsense, and that's because next year, of course, you're going to have the ability to say, "Oh, look what we did." And that's why you should get us back into office again. So it's very political. My issue, of course, is as per normal, is they have not listened to the front line. Just as Sue has said, they have not listened. So they need to wake up and listen to the people more, especially those people on the front line.
Susie, probably a similar question, but you've talked about homeschooling, but I mean, does it surprise you if you put 90 kids effectively into a barn that education is not going to be as positive for a lot of those kids?
Well, I've been involved in our local school in building quite a few of these barns. So like three in our school. And I don't know, I actually saw in the article that was linked, like quite a few educators like the open plan buildings. And I know I can speak for our teachers, they love it. The thing that we have also is dividable classrooms with the walls that can come in and out. And I know that's expensive, which probably National doesn't want to spend the money on. But I think educators need options. And I think it's good for kids to be able to be in a bigger group, a larger group. The largest groups that we have in these bigger rooms is 60. And then we have breakout rooms. And honestly, they are so flash, the buildings that we've made. So they're sliding walls that are all glass. We've got like ports everywhere so you can put your laptops in. There's screens that the teachers can Chromecast. There's speakers everywhere. And each of the rooms have a kitchen so that the kids can do different learning as well. So I don't know. It's worked for us. And so I'm just saying this is whatever political football this is, it has very little bearing on actually what educators do, because I have faith in them to adapt, and I don't think they listen to either way. So it's just like politicians being politicians. Yeah.
Was perhaps the irony this was imposed, for want of a better word, without much choice from the sector, and now it's been removed without much choice. But Bruce, I mean, what's your take? Has there been evidence that you've come across that these are, these modern learning environment, these larger halls, if you will, are successful, or are you really a fan of the more traditional system? Or like Susie, should there just be choice school by school?
Of course, I'm a fan of the traditional system. I think
Loaded question.
Yeah, I think the open plan learning is really a consequence of a particular view of what a child is. I think if you believe a child is somebody that assumes education and doesn't need to be taught, but you can actually allow the child to learn and choose what he wants to learn himself or herself, then open plan learning is a kind of natural consequence from that. So if you're going to have the idea that the slippage in our understanding of what a teacher is to a facilitator, then open plan learning is a kind of natural consequence of all of that. And I don't think that you can expect anything other than that. And one of the consequences of that is that people don't learn, because alongside the idea of the teacher as facilitator, or the idea of a child being able to learn himself, given the right kind of opportunities to do so, is a loss of content that is being passed on to them. And so content involves a certain formalization of learning, and involves a certain formalization of the way you were taught. And with the move away from content, you get, with that open plan teaching offers, it also exacerbates that loss of content. So it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. And it's not one in which children actually learn. They either learn because they don't learn habits. I don't think they learn habits of discipline and order and so on. They develop a kind of notion of freedom that I think is unhelpful, not only in learning, but in life generally. So open plan education gets a big cross from me.
Well, I can see in the comments that I'm able to access tonight. As I said to viewers and listeners, I'm not able to access as fully as normal, but there's already quite a bit of debate going on in the space. But I have used quite a bit of time on the education space. So now I want to move to that place of Karakia, or prayer. And we've got a little video here of David Seymour, who started this furore the other day.
Speech today.
Sorry, yeah.
At the local government conference, you were going to mention Karakia, but you didn't end up mentioning it. Why didn't you mention it, and what did you have to say about it?
Oh, there's no particular reason, but it's true. You know, I don't expect a priest to show up every time I break wind. I don't expect a priest to show up every time I break ground on a new building, and I don't think that you need a kaumatua to come and say Karakia either. One of the reasons stuff costs a lot in New Zealand is that to build a new IKEA, to build a Costco or whatever, you require a whole lot of mana whenua consultation that doesn't actually make the boat go faster.
So how much does a Karakia cost then?
Well, it depends. I mean, have you had to pay for someone to come along and do one in the middle of a project that you're responsible for?
Me, have I?
Yeah.
No, I haven't.
No,
How much
okay,
have
well,
you had?
well, if you don't know what the price is, just don't impose it on other people. I mean, it's pretty simple, right? Someone wants to build a building. It's actually no one else's business. They should be able to build a building without having someone come along and say a karakia, just like once upon a time you had to get your local Catholic priest to come along and say a prayer before you did anything. Now we've said, actually, we don't like that. We don't impose our morality on other people. And now we're saying exactly the same thing.
So when should Karakia be used, in your opinion?
Whenever the people involved in the situation want to do one, not imposed on a third party because we're trying to impose our religious beliefs on someone else. It's pretty simple stuff. I mean, this actually happened hundreds of years ago. We moved past imposing one person's spirituality on another.
How often? How often?
So, yeah.
Could you clarify what the main problem is? Is it the fact that it's a religious prayer, or is it the cost that it costs to bring people in, or is it the fact that it's cultural?
Well, it's both those things. I mean, since we got rid of enforced spirituality, people have been much better off. I mean, you know, a lot of the arguments for, say, the prohibition of abortion or euthanasia or even homosexuality were really spiritual beliefs imposed on another person. Now we say, look, we're not going to do that anymore. We should let people get on with their lives. I'm saying the same thing with building stuff so we can have more affordable stuff in the shops. If you impose your spirituality and say you have to do it according to my spiritual beliefs, it's going to be slower and more expensive.
Who's enforcing that though? Because a lot of the
councillors
companies actually electively want to do it. They're not being forced to it in a lot of cases though.
Really? You don't think that it's actually criteria of their resource consent? Because that's exactly what Simon Court's demonstrated that it is. And of course they come and say, oh no, we're a responsible corporate citizen. We love this stuff because they're not going to say anything else, are they? And that's why I'm standing up for them.
Do you think they're lying?
I think that they've discovered that if you've got a responsibility to your shareholders.
Look, I let that go for a while because there's quite a bit in it, and I'm actually going to fire different questions at our different panelists. So, Susie, starting with you, you've drawn the short straw. I mean, is David right? Is Karakia become an imposition inside our secular state, and that there isn't a place for actually spirituality?
I think Seymour always neglects honour for those who've gone before for tradition. He doesn't really like it, you can tell. But I think that mana whenua considerations like kaitiakitanga are good. Like guardianship encourages good stewardship of land. And so tikanga requires karakia as part of like acknowledging what's gone before, what we intend to do with our buildings now and the whenua now. And I think that's only ever been a problem, not a problem, but it's been a little less clear for me, the practice of karakia when with a particular building project we did not too long ago. We had to have 3 blessings, and that was in addition to the actual opening. We had to have karakia, and there were fees sort of sent through, and at that point, even the Māori in my team, they were like, hey, let's inquire of our iwi, what's our sort of norm, cultural norm, and let's inquire of our regional mana whenua and ask. And so we had the wherewithal to sort of have that conversation and respectfully as possible, ask sort of what what's the fee entail and that sort of thing. But having said that, at the end of the day, we got understanding, and we have a good relationship with our kaumātua in our region, and so it goes beyond the ceremonies and the blessings and all the different things that are usually involved. So I personally appreciate karakia. I think it brings like centering. I don't want to sound too weird, but it helps when you're, say, in a school building. You're helping the kids, you're helping everyone understand, like, we're riding on the shoulders of people who've gone before us, and this building that we're praying over is going to be used by generations to come. And long after we go, we need God's help to like help children for many years to come here, and we need his help and his wisdom now. So that's what I always use karakia for, is I'm just praying to God for his blessing for this generation and the ones coming. So I like karakia personally, and I like it in our community as many times as possible. But yeah, I understand what Seymour is saying, that it slows down process and not everybody wants it, but I think he's just ignoring the many people who do actually appreciate bringing our culture and our traditions into the here and now, and into what we're building infrastructurally. But yeah.
So Elliot, not all karakia is Christian, and some would argue it doesn't need to be. A lot of karakia is just really poetic. Sometimes it's quite pagan. Is that acceptable? Is that okay in a secular society or for Christian believers? And Susie as well touched on, at times, if I heard you right, Susie, money's been asked for this. This isn't enforced or a financial requirement. I mean, any comments around any of that?
So I was trying to not do this, but I think I'm going to have to defend David and what he said. Because David actually did say, he didn't say that he wants karakia, or prayer for that matter, wiped off. He said that it depends on what the work that they're doing, and if those who are involved in it want to do it and want to perform it. So he was pretty open with that part. Now, we all know that very likely David would not want any sort of prayer done anyway. So that's just something of his part. But he does say that so he's basically saying, if people do want to have a karakia, if people do want to have a prayer, great, no worries, they can go for it. But he's just saying that it should not be enforced. Now, I will also put out there that the karakia of today is not. There is a really strong push. Some of the old bloods will have karakia where they contain iho karaiti, where they talk about God as for being God, and that's because when the missionaries came over to New Zealand, that they really took on the shepherd. They really took on the beautiful lessons of Christianity. But what you've got now, of course, is you've got not Christians, but you've got activists and you've got academics who are actively erasing Christianity from when Māori did take it on. So now the karakia is that whole, it's not just trying to empty it, but they're now very pagan. They're very much talking about papa, rangi. They're talking about tane, mahuta. They are trying to bring in all the old gods, because you can also see that they're trying to bring in the old hatreds, the old utu that they had pre-Christian days, you know, in the 1700s. So the ideas around this new form of karakia being forced upon them does not contain Christianity, and they're actively trying to erase Christianity from it. And of course, as you've said, they are putting fees on top of it. Now, this goes back to this very, very, I think, world-breaking environment for New Zealand, that we are at a crossroads where everything is now being forced upon New Zealand businesses. If you're Māori or not Māori, you now have to pay through the ringer. I mean, Ngāi Tahu, we just found out today that Ngāi Tahu's collected $500 million from the taxpayer. $500 million. So the grift area is strong. There is a very active and overt push to erase Christianity from Māoridom, and that the prayer is simply one angle that they're doing it. And the fact that they're charging for it, come on, I think that's a big one straight up.
We've got loads of comments coming through, so many I can't grasp them. So Sue, I'm going to turn to you. So obviously Seymour's focusing on Karakia, and particularly he's focusing on, you know, development programs like the development program, big developments like IKEA and the opening of playgrounds. But, you know, there's the likes of the parliamentary prayer. I think it was a Green Party MP said, hey, look, we have this prayer in Parliament. No one's trying to cancel that. Is there a double standard in play here?
Yeah, it's interesting because David Seymour is not a friend of any Christian or Christian worldview or Christians or conservative people, and he pushes a very benign, you know, wanting this kind of blandness to, you know, that to happen. Look, we have a vibrant spirituality, but we have a move in our modern society to dismantle everything that is Christian, and David Seymour does that. With a swipe, you know, he does it sleight of hand. So what I would ask is a prayer only acceptable if it's said in Māori and presented as a karakia? And also we have this, because we've got this vacuous move to take away so much Christianity, and you alluded to the prayer in Parliament to make it almost, they didn't remove God, but they removed Jesus, and we serve a triune God. That's what Christianity is. It's a triune Trinity belief. So, and taking away that, inserting Maori spirituality. So that's where I guess that when you see them trying to impose it onto a building site, I'm with Elliot that there is a time and a place for karakia. We, you know, spiritual things are important, and I think that in our modern society we have, in the quest to push forward and to have this a secular world, we've ditched a lot of spirituality. I alluded to that a few weeks ago. So yeah, karakia has its time and its place. Does it belong on a building site? Does it belong and reduces it to a tokenism? In Australia, they have Welcome to Country and again payment to Aboriginal elders, and it's become a token. It's, you know, it's the beginning of games, AFL games and things like that, and it's become very tokenism. And I just think that that's not the place for it. That's reduces the meaning for it. But I sort of get, you know, I would go back to my original point: is prayer only acceptable if it's a karakia said in Māori? So, and with the danger of that, karakia has changed in modern day to involve more Maori spirituality. I think it was Elliot who alluded to that. So, yeah, that's where I sit with that.
Bruce, you're lucky last. I'm not going to repeat the other questions. I was interested in that part where Seymour was saying this is enforced spirituality, and linked it then to what I would argue are ethical discussions like abortion and euthanasia. Is he right, or is he clutching at desperate straws?
He's half right. There are a lot of words these days that are used loosely. And two of the words that are frequently used loosely and open to all kinds of interpretation, one of them is spirituality and the other is culture. And sometimes both words are used to replace religion. And I think David Seymour and Winston Peters too, when they're talking about spirituality, need to be a great deal more precise. I don't think they've come to grips with the foundational truth that religion informs culture. For example, what does David mean when he says enforce spirituality? Now, I think he's thinking really of enforcing religion. And that, of course, because of his secular background and his understanding of secularism, is he sees religion as anathema. And with the increasing use of Karakia and in schools and in other public ceremonies, he likely views that as a threat to secular society, and I think it is. Because Christianity is no longer our overarching story, its rituals have to be replaced by something. And they're being replaced by not so much Maori religion, but by a kind of pagan mysticism. And David's complaint, I think, of enforced spirituality is he sees that as being imposed on us, and he's not far wrong, because it is. And I think he's observing, perhaps intuitively maybe, I'm not sure, the replacement of one religion by another, which is what we're actually seeing. And that replacement of one religion by another is the advent of a new civil religion, which is informed by Maori ritual and given celebratory mechanisms by that. And if you want an example of the shift that's taken place, think of Anzac Day. When I was a kid, Anzac Day was always about sacrifice, and it was nearly always taken by a local clergyman. And they talked about the supreme sacrifice of giving your life for others. And sometimes that would go on to talk about the supreme sacrifice of Christ giving his life for us. Now, that is no longer the case. We've got a shift of that religion of Christianity being taken over by the new civil religion, which has nothing to do with sacrifice or with certainly any understanding of who Jesus might be. So, although I'm quite sure David Seymour hasn't thought that through like that, that nevertheless, I think, is what's happening. And he is talking about that in some kind of imprecise way, but in a way that's not entirely unhelpful, I don't think.
Elliot, I see you've got a further comment to make, or I sense you have.
Yeah, I just wanted to say those comments that David was saying about legalized suicide and abortion and all that horrific stuff. I just want to say that I actually think that the church leadership, the Laodicean nature of most church leadership in New Zealand, have to take a big chomp of that pie, because in terms of group psychology, we listen to our leadership, and you've got ones like Susie's pastor, husband, the churches who are out there, Brian Tamaki, Peter Morlock, and a few others who are very strong. So I actually think that the Christian or the church in New Zealand is sickened. We are quite Laodicean. If we wanted to actually really have an environment where we could strongly push for Christianity to be in New Zealand, then we lack a great deal of leadership within the Christian church, and it's I think that they need to chomp on a little of that.
Some great comments coming through from people, a real mix. I'll just summarize insofar as some saying, look, there is no place for karakia. Others saying, look, we shouldn't have to pay for that or prayers. Others saying, no, actually, it's perfectly fine, whether pagan or not. So this has really hit up the commenters. I would just make the point that Seymour is always very quick to try and link religion to any of the topics he disagrees with. So the fact that he's now talking prayer or karakia, he mentioned abortion, euthanasia, homosexual law reform, he always tries to put opponents as simply religiously motivated. And I can say, certainly having been in the parliament, and you guys have been involved in advocacy, often we are joined by Christians in this, but actually often a lot of other people with no religious belief who understand good ethics from not. And I would just say I do worry that he really has quite a deep libertarian mindset that's, as I say, pro-abortion, pro-euthanasia. And I couldn't help but reminded panel that a former leader of the ACT Party wanted to legalize incest, which probably people weren't wanting me to remind them about tonight. But if you remove any moral, ethical, cultural, or religious framework, and Bruce and I can debate those distinctions later after the show, if they are removed, you do end up with this anarchic libertarian world. Anyway, I'm just going to throw up. I was going to run an ad, but I'm not. We're running out of time, and we're just going to deal with the under 16-year-old question. But I'm just going to do blatant advertising of the Family Forum and a reminder to everyone watching that the Forum on the Family is on again this year in August. It's going to be amazing. We have an incredible lineup of speakers that you can see there. Seats are selling fast, and we know from previous years it sells out. So we want all and as many of you there. And the exciting news as well, twofold, is we are going to have a Straight Talk panel being recorded live in front of you on the Thursday night. And the second exciting part is I'm not the one there. You get to see other wonderful hosts and guests. So sign up to forumonthefamily.nz. We'd love to see you there. Panelists, we're about to run out of time in about 5 minutes. So we're putting the pride laces to the side. We're putting colonial statues to the side. We're going to return to the old doozy, which is the motherland for some. The United Kingdom, Sir Keir Starmer, is moving to allow under 16-year-olds. Well, there we go. But 16-year-olds and older to vote. So like New Zealand, at the moment, it's 18 and above. He wants to move it to 16. Bruce, is that a good idea or not? And should we let 14, 12 and 8-year-olds vote by the same logic?
No, it's a terrible idea. And Starmer's not the brightest star in the sky, by the way.
Well, there's something we all agree on.
I think that he wants 16-year-olds to vote because he's desperate and he thinks they're going to vote for the left, which recent polls suggest that he's probably right. And I suspect he doesn't care that young people generally are politically uninformed. And that's not a condemnation of young people, by the way. It's simply an observation of what's true. And just 1 point, or maybe 1.5 points. Had Starmer read the prophet Isaiah, he would have known that one of the punishments brought on to Judah because of its unfaithfulness was that children would rule it. So giving 16-year-olds a vote seems to be a step in the right direction. I had this vision, a nightmare really, of holograms of young Greta Thunberg everywhere, all over the place, controlling everything. She's 22 now and worth $3 million, would you believe? 3 million New Zealand dollars, that is, from book royalties, speaking engagements and awards. And so such is the rewards of modern protest.
Well, Susie, I mean, your own perspective on this. I mean, 16-year-olds do have some responsibility in society. They're clearly saying they want to have a say. I mean, is it not unreasonable in a democracy that they're given a chance?
It is unreasonable because they're uninformed politically.
Oh. That's true. Well, I was going to throw that to Susie.
Look, they don't have a clue.
Well, we've got 15-year-olds, 17-year-old, 18-year-old. It would be a great teaching opportunity for us as a family, but and we got to look at general families, and in general, I don't think there would be responsibility there. I think any 16-year-old would just be like, well, who are you voting for, mum and dad, or who are my mates voting for? And they're ideologically captured by social media most of the time. So I can see why Keir Starmer thinks that they would, be to his advantage to lower the age, but it's not smart. I don't think, young people sort of still forming, their brains are still fusing, and it should be much, much older than 16. So it's kind of too young, I think. They won't, so few that age are even politically interested. Bad idea.
So Elliot, you deal a lot with young people. I'm sure some amazing ones and some who will be challenging. But Susie's touched on something there. We know, I think, is that young males' brains don't properly develop until at least 25. Bruce mentioned Greta Thunberg, even at 22. Some of us would not like to see voting. I mean, should it be higher? Is 18 too low, or are you very supportive of 16-year-olds?
So you said something which is actually a key. I've spoken to literally hundreds, probably a few thousand, but hundreds and hundreds of kids around this particular topic. Almost the entirety of them say along the lines of, I don't care. I don't care. they do not care. They couldn't care less. They're thinking about boyfriend, girlfriend, what's the latest music, K-pop stars, blah, 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 blah. They couldn't care less. And again, what however, those who do vote will very strongly be to the left because they don't have an understanding of, well, to be fair, more than 10 years of understanding life itself. So they won't have a deep understanding of what the ramifications are. If you were to ask me, I'll probably say that I think maybe in the mid-20s is probably a good stage to have some sort of voting understanding, because at least then you've had some work, you've gone off and done real stupid things, but you've been able to survive once you hit that 25-year stage. That's my personal belief, so I know we've got the 18. So 16's foolish, but it's very much a desire for the left and the far left.
Sue, final word as a panelist, your take on this. I mean, Elliot just said, it's clearly left-wing motivated. So is the corollary of the opposite true, that obviously the right is trying to stop this? But if it does go ahead in the UK and if it got here to New Zealand, should 16-year-olds, for example, find more consistency, such as being able to go to jail? Because we have a youth system until someone is 18. We have a whole lot of different expectations. They want to vote. Should they suffer, for example, the full consequences of the judicial system?
Interestingly, in the UK, that they're saying that by moving it to 16, it's actually going to influence the Reform Party. That young men, particularly young people, moving towards more conservative principles. But you don't make a law. That might suit Reform for now, but another generation it might suit the left, or vice versa. Interestingly, all the points like brain not developed and what your parents might vote for were all used to stop women having the vote. And we wouldn't want to see the women not have the vote. It's only 1974 that we lowered it from 21 to 18. So that's 51 years ago. And what were the basis for that to move to 18? Yes, as you said, why not 14 or 12? Because all the arguments are saying, but this influences them and these are going to be laws that affect them. Well, that's non-existent, because you can have a newborn and laws made now. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to look at laws that are made now. What are they going to look like in 20 years' time? So I'm actually going to probably be controversial and say I think it should go back up to 20 or 21. Back in the day, our history has been you could only vote if you were a man, or you were a landowner, or you were a taxpayer. Well, those last two things, a landowner, a taxpayer, you have, I guess, what you call skin in the game. For the effects of some of the laws. So, but I think it's a maturity level. I would say back to 20 or 21, purely on a maturity level. You have probably done studied completely, and started your career. You're thinking a little bit more about your place in the world, and your worldview is a bit more developed, and your understanding of how the world works, your responsibilities, your resilience is in a better position to vote. So, and it's not interestingly, Elliot said they couldn't care. I'd agree with that. 16-year-olds wouldn't. They say, do it online. Someone was interviewed on the news the other night saying about online voting for local elections, and they said, I'd do it online, but if I could be bothered. So, we've got to weigh this up, and it's a serious thing to vote, and the issues are serious. Changing a law, you're lawmakers, you're developing policy, you're developing the shape of our nation. These are serious things. So I think that we need to just not trivialise it, and perhaps put it up to 20 or 21 again.
There you go.
Is Simon muted?
Oh, God. No, look, I can't do a show without muting myself. I really can't. Everyone who follows me knows this. No, I was just saying that a lot of people online are furiously debating whether to go up or go up even higher. But I think actually, not so much as a summation, but I was actually quite struck, Sue, by what you were saying, and probably can sit with all of us, is the voting laws have changed over time. They haven't just been, set in stone. But it won't surprise people that I'm not particularly. I just think back when I was 16, and I would not give 16-year-old Simon the vote. In fact, some people would be thinking they shouldn't give 48-year-old Simon the vote. Hey, we've run out of time. We've gone even over 9 o'clock. We didn't get to a number of topics, but we've been comprehensive on those we have. As a quick heads up, I've actually done a Family Matters, which will drop and go live in a day or two with the lawyer, his name there, Paul Conrath, who's actually represented clients against the police who are participating in Pride parades, arguing that this is a matter of impartiality. He's also representing those who have been forced to wear rainbow laces and armbands and so forth against their religious beliefs and others. So we didn't, as a panel, get to talk about that tonight. I think we probably will return to it next week. But in between that, Family Matters will drop, and Paul was amazing. Guys, to each and every one of you, thank you so much to Sue, to Susie, to Bruce, to Elliot. Thank you for being part of this guest panel with a guest host. We will not do a poll after this to see whether Bob should come back. That is a given. But a final reminder to all our wonderful viewers and listeners with Family First. There are now a multitude of ways to engage with us. Like tonight, you are watching, which is fantastic. But we also have a lot of readable content on our webpage, familyfirst.org.nz. You can see summaries and transcripts of these shows, but also fresh commentary on what's happening in and around New Zealand and around the world. And if also you're like Elliot and you have giant headphones and Spotify, you can listen to us in the morning or in the evening when you're doing your run. So watch, read, and listen with Family First. But to all of you who have joined us tonight for all your comments, thank you so much. To Bob overseas, enjoy the conference. And to all our wonderful panelists and viewers and listeners, have a great night.